Hello and welcome to this special edition taping at Peking University today. I'm your host today, Fei Fei. So first of all, let's say hello to our lively audience here at Peking University. Hello, Peking University. Thank you for coming. We are taping this episode of Climate Watch. Climate Watch is a podcast that explores how the world is tackling climate change. Every week on CGTN Radio, we talk with experts, innovators, and change makers who are driving the clean energy transition, shaping climate policy, and rethinking sustainability. And it's been a true thrill today to be able to come to Peking University, one of the best universities here in China and also around the world. This is also the place I'd like to remind our listeners that new ideas emerge from clashes of perspectives multiple times across modern Chinese history. So at this critical moment of our time, when extreme weathers are pushing many societies to their limits, we come to Peking University. And over the past 2 weeks, I guess a lot of you have paid attention over the news that world leaders, policymakers, scientists, and many young people like our audience here today gathered in Belém, Brazil for COP30. They discussed the future of our humanities facing the rising climate risks. And there are a lot of big topics. They talked about adaptation, mitigation, energy transition, just transition, youth development, so on and so forth. But what comes out of these meetings and discussions can be very complicated with a lot of information and difficult to navigate. So that's why we have this lineup of experts today to help us to navigate all the important topics being discussed at COP30. And also, I'd like to remind our audience and also our listeners that this episode of Climate Watch is in collaboration with Peking University's Institute of Carbon Neutrality and its Beyond Climate Dialogue program, which aims to build bridges across disciplines and open new possibilities for a regenerative future. So first of all, let me introduce you our guests today. First of all, we have Professor Zhang Haibin, Associate Dean and Professor at the School of International Studies. He's also the Deputy Dean of the Institute of Carbon Neutrality at Peking University. He is also a member of China's National Expert Panel on Climate Change and also been deeply involved in international environmental negotiations for many years. So in my own words, he's basically one of the brains behind our climate and environment policymaking here in China. Welcome, Professor Zhang.
Thank you.
And also we have Dr. Wang Binbin, research professor and founder of the Climate Future Global Innovation Lab, or also called C-Force Lab at the Institute of Carbon Neutrality at the university. She also the initiator of the Beyond Climate Dialogue program. We are working together today. She's followed the UNFCCC process since 2009, and now she focuses on accelerating bottom-up action and global joint efforts toward a net zero future. Welcome, Binbin. And lastly, we have Dr. Khalid Hameed, postdoctoral researcher at the Beijing Jingwa Agricultural Science and Technology Innovation Center. His research focuses on how climate change impacts plant growth and development. Hello, Hameed. Since this edition of Climate Watch is working together with Dr. Wang Binbin's Beyond Climate Dialogue, I'll firstly give the floor to Binbin. COP30 just wrapped up in Brazil, and this being your 15th time participating in COP meetings. So how have the past 2 weeks or 10 days been similar or different from your past experiences?
So thank you, Fei Fei. And my first COP is in 2009, COP15. That time is in Copenhagen. What I want to say, because you want me to compare with the COP just finished. So before I participate COP15 in 2009, there are still a strong debate in China whether climate change is a hoax of US, whether climate change is real or not. And so to convince myself, I visited Gansu province, north of China, and in a small village, I met a farmer. And he said, I just check with him, do you hear about climate change? Because at that moment, for myself, it's my first time to really reflect on what climate change is. So I have no expectation on his response. But the farmer said, yes, I know. Because in Gansu, usually it's 9 droughts in 10 years. But in this decade, 10 droughts in 10 years. And because I plant the corns here, and there are no rain in spring, and this year there is a snowball destroy everything. So climate change impact my livelihood. At that moment, I understand climate impact is real in China. So this is also the point, support me to continue this track, follow the global climate governance to see what happened and how we can address climate change together. So when I was in Copenhagen, I witnessed what happened there, and it's really, although at that moment a few discussion in China about climate change, not as popular as nowadays. But in Copenhagen, I found it's a global campaign already. And so many people gathered in that small city and discuss climate change and also to see how to combat climate change together. And so I think, oh yes, it's a true problem in China and also very popular topic around the world. So when I came back, I cooperate and support the Chinese government to open the dialogue with the multi-stakeholders to see how to push this kind of cooperation, work on climate change, and also conduct the pilot in small village to see how to combine not only like mitigation, but mitigation with adaptation and poverty reduction together. Because at that moment, around 2009, China followed the global track. So only focus on mitigation, but China also impacted by climate change. So this is the point. How can we adapt to climate change? I'm sure Mohammed will have a lot of common sense with me. And so how to help the vulnerable people to address climate change? So this kind of pilots, we made a lot of development and also contribute my cent to the China's national adaptation strategy. And then I participate COP21 in Paris 10 years ago.
That was the big one, where the Paris Agreement.
Yes, and I witnessed, I think I witnessed the brightest side of global cooperation. And also there, it's my first, I first met Professor Zhang, and Professor Zhang, as you mentioned, is an expert, tracked not only the global climate governance, but also global environment governance for many, many years. So I just stop here, and I think we can have more questions to Professor Zhang.
Yes, Professor Zhang. I do have these big questions being, hovering over my head for so long, is that when we are talking about climate change, we sometimes think, climate change and environmental issues are sort of interchangeable. But in fact, in our policy-making process, there's, two separate things. So can you first explain to us, what's the difference between environment and climate in policy-making, and how are they sort of correlated between each other?
Okay, I think this is a very interesting question and also very important. My observation is that different countries understand the question of the relationship between global environment and climate governance in different ways. In theory, or more broadly, climate is part of environment in theory, okay? In broadest term, global climate governance should be part of global environment governance. This is the way we look at this relationship. However, in reality, because climate change issue now is so important, so urgent, so outstanding, so more and more countries just singled it out. And then, so now more and more countries, governments and the people, they put the two issues in parallel. But in theory, I would argue that actually it should be part of global environment governance. Therefore, now we say China now is going to participate, contribute to global climate governance, and then we add environment and climate. So, I mean, this is a very interesting question. My basic observation is that because climate change issue now is so important, so urgent, so now global climate governance now can be used with climate environmental governance in parallel. So they, in reality, in terms of negotiations, climate negotiation and environmental negotiation are the two separate multilateral process. For example, the COP, now we have a COP 30. This is a sort of a climate multilateral process. And next week, I will go to the Nairobi to attend the UNIA, the 7th UNIA. That is the environmental negotiations. So this is two separate multilateral negotiation process. However, they are very much close with each other.
Yes, so that reminds me that in our central government's document, they talk about 减污、降碳、扩绿, reduce pollution, cut emissions, and also expand on the green development. And so that is basically my question when it comes to the difference between climate and environment. And so coming back to the climate negotiation process over the past 2 weeks at COP30, there has been a lot of discussions and debates going on. And I think a lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of the big words, for example, mitigation and adaptation. It's very difficult for us to draw the link between those negotiations happening on UN platforms with us. With, for example, when I buy a cup of coffee, how is that going to affect me? So can you first, sort of looking back at the past 10 years after especially the landmark Paris Agreement was passed, how has Paris Agreement, for example, been affecting us today?
Okay, this is a big question. Actually, the outcome document concluded by the COP30, the first part, if you read the full text, it's about how to assess Paris Agreement, because the people around the world, they actually they are very much concerned about what happened to the Paris Agreement in the past decade, and at the same time, how to look at the future of Paris Agreement. In this year, the 2025, is a very important time or year for global climate governance, because it marked the, just as you mentioned, this is a 10th anniversary of Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement, according to me, this is a most important legal framework for international climate cooperation. This is most important now. So now we talk about, if we want to talk about how to push forward global climate governance, the question is how to implement Paris Agreement. It's very difficult to reach Paris Agreement. I think the big countries, the small countries, all the parties to UNFCCC, they made joint efforts to reach Paris Agreement. This is a not easy job. Therefore, we should value this mechanism very much, or else we will suffer more. Therefore, how to assess this? I think different countries, different people have a different opinion on how to assess Paris Agreement, but basically, generally speaking, I'm very much confident that we should, assess the Paris Agreement in very positive term, for several reasons. Number one, let's look at, according to a lot of modeling, a lot of think tanks research, including UN system, in the last 10 years, if without the Paris Agreement, the global average temperature in the 21st century will go beyond 4 degrees Celsius, go beyond 4 degrees Celsius. Now, after the 10 years, where we are now? We are now standing at the 2.3 to 2.6 track. So, a remarkable decline in terms of the temperature rise. Of course, now we haven't been able to achieve the final target, which is 2 degrees Celsius and the 1.5 degrees. We still have some distance gap, but generally speaking, I think this we already made some big progress. This is very important. I just want to emphasize this. In other sense, for example, you mentioned that in what way the Paris Agreement influence our society, our government, and the international community. I think a lot of aspects. For example, I think the Paris Agreement, implementation of Paris Agreement influence our way to look at the world, to look at the relationship between human being and nature. We just ask ourselves, 10 years ago, how do we think about environmental issue, climate issue? I think compared 10 years ago with today, our environment and climate awareness remarkably increased. Another example is that today, now half of the cars now run on the road, half of them are EV, electric cars. I think very, very few people thought we can have so many EV cars. I think nobody, including me. I think 10 years ago, we never thought that we have so many electric cars on the streets, on the roads. This is, I think, a fundamental way which change the daily life of the ordinary people.
And that reminds me of when we are talking about with a lot of experts in climate, and when it comes to the results, the outcomes from COP meetings. Sometimes, according to some of the media outlets out there, that is not really positive. But we are talking about some 200 countries on the negotiation table, and different countries have their different situations, different needs, different targets. It's already very difficult to meet on some same page for these 200, even think about 200 people to agree on certain things would be different. And we're talking about countries and nations, different cultures as well. So it's definitely a big step forward to have the Paris Agreement. But now, after 10 years, at this COP, at COP 30, is a lot of people call that the COP of implementation. We're now going eventually, in fact, we're finally getting to the part of what we are doing, not just about meeting on the consensus. So looking ahead, for example, for the next year or 10 years, what do you see of the ways or the challenges or the roads ahead for us to, what is the top job for us to do first of all? What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Okay, now this is a big question and also very important. It seems to me that now, after the COP 30, and we have very strong feeling and observation that this COP, the basic objective or the target is to how to facilitate and accelerate the implementation of the Paris Agreement. Because the previous, since the Paris Agreement was reached in 2015, a lot of years, the following years are spent on how to, finish the articles and the regulations to Paris Agreement. So in the previous years, we spent a lot of time on how to negotiate the regulations and the articles, the mechanisms. So finish, for example, the Article 6, how to finish the negotiation. Article 6 is about the carbon market. So now all these things are finished. So for this year, it seems to me that we now will focus on implementation. Just the words, the articles, the regulations, the rules, already, the negotiation already finished. So from now on, we will focus on the implementation. From focus on actions. Just as the Brazilian President Lula, at his opening ceremony for this COP30, he emphasized that now implementation and actions are most needed. I totally agree with him. So looking into the future, I think the words, ambitions, objectives, very important. But what's more important, ladies and gentlemen, I would argue that action and the implementation are more important than the ambitions and objectives. Of course, this is, I'm not saying that ambition is not important. What I want to say is that action is more important than words, than the ambitions.
I want to follow up on the implementation. What do you see of the final outcome from COP30 is called the global Mutirão. Sorry, it's a Portuguese. It's been challenging for me to pronounce that, but means joint efforts in English. So what do you see are the points that stand out to you, Professor Zhang, in this document?
I read through the full text of this document, which is entitled Global Mutirão. One of my deepest impression is that cooperation, international climate cooperation, is extremely important. So because I remember that the document used the word, the urgent response to climate change, this is an urgent crisis, so we need to make an urgent response. Nowadays, I think several things we should bear in mind. Number one now is geopolitical tensions is rising up. This is reality. The power competitions, and at the same time, we can see that U.S. withdraw from Paris Agreement, and for COP30, U.S. for the first time didn't send the delegation to the COP. This is the first time in the last 30 years. And the US is a very influential actor in global climate governance. The absence of US, no matter you like it or not, of course exert a negative impact on global climate governance and international climate negotiations. Therefore, just under this context, in this, the relationship, the overall international relations is not very much favorable to international climate corporations. So this is a reality we have to admit and recognize this. And how to push forward, how to go ahead. I think that we have a lot of ways. For example, I think that developing countries, now we talk a lot about global south, and China and other developing countries, they express a very strong political will in this COP30. They are united. the work together send the world a very strong signal that multilateralism still working, Paris Agreement still working, and international climate cooperation still working. I think the message I got from the COP30 is very strong, very strong. That increased my confidence in the future of global climate governance. At the same time, what's more impressive to me is that by this the joint effort you mentioned by all the parties, that is 194 parties except U.S. All the parties express their commitment to push forward low carbon and green development. So this journey, this direction I got is that this is irreversible. The world already, taken that direction and will not be reversed. These two signals, I think, from the COP30 is very impressive to me and increase my personal confidence in the future of global climate governance. We have difficulties nowadays, but we have more resolutions. We have more political will to unite, to get overthrough this difficult time. And I think that we may make more joint efforts.
And since Professor Zhang mentioned, this COP is a big COP for the global South countries, for developing countries. And that's why we also have Dr. Mohammed and Hameed joining us. He's from Pakistan, and his work also focuses on the intersection of climate change and also the agriculture sector. So I would like to pose this question to Dr. Hameed. This COP is also a big COP for adaptation. That means, yes, we have climate change, and how do we live with the changes? How do we live with the rising climate threats? So can you first tell us, how is your research been telling you on how climate change affects our agriculture sector?
So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I would like first introduce the climate change and the environment. Like Professor mentioned that the climate is for long change. It is not for the short term. But the environmental change, it is a short duration changes. So everything which impact for the long term, it definitely impact a lot of aspects. So in my study, I have studied on the plant and the agriculture sector. So I have seen that it impact a lot of the agriculture sector, especially it drastically changed the climate intercropping pattern, one thing. The other thing, it also changed much variation in the temperature. On the temperature, it impact badly for the production. And it also impact a lot of the disease because temperature variation much existing in all the countries. Due to that, it is reduction of the production. It is also very vulnerable to the disease and the insects. Due to that, it is a very big challenge, loss of a lot of the food security. So that's why we are finding how we can make a better production in changing this climate. So I think in our study, we have studied especially the climate resistance and the resilient crop. First should be the biotechnology, which can be helpful to enhance the technology for the agriculture sector. The other, we should adopt the more advanced technology, which can be trigger alarming what is happening in the real time. So that is the main thing, because suddenly change is happening. Due to that, it can be impact on the raining season. It also impact on your water scarcities. So that's why we are checking how we can optimize production by using the water resources, also the temperature regulation. So we are making some modeling which can be helpful to sustain production in all the region. So this is also important. We have to adopt regional wise modeling and the pattern, what is happening in the agriculture sector. So I just give one example from the Pakistan. From the last 10 years, Pakistan has the drastically temperature changes. Before the summer was around about in my area 40 degrees centigrade, but nowadays it is around about 50 degrees centigrade. Due to that, it is a much heat waves. It also impact on the water scarcity in our area, and due to that, the huge loss of different, because our area is mainly focused on wheat, rice, and maize. It decreased a lot of the yield production. So definitely we have to think how we can improve by using the more advanced and more sustainable technology. I think nowadays the sensor-based technology, it is more helpful to real-time measuring and real-time standardize the production and the optimizing the whole process. Yeah.
So as you mentioned, Pakistan is also a very big agricultural country, that it depends a lot on the agriculture sector. So how has adaptation buildings been working in Pakistan, and how has the relationship between China and Pakistan helping in that area?
Yeah, the Pakistan, it is a 61% the agriculture sector based GDP, and due to the climate, it badly impact, and we are losing about 30 to 40% reduction of the yield of every crop. And we also have the different region, the mountainous area, the land. It is a different variation. Some are near the coastal area, some is in the middle area land, and the land depletion is also big challenge in our country, because due to climate, it is also depleting a lot of the biodiversity. So I think China have developed a lot of the innovation technology which can be helpful to transfer from China to Pakistan. Like they have developed a lot of the decarbonization technology and carbon capturing technology, which is already we are transferred from China to Pakistan. And the other is the drip irrigation and also the sensor-based technology. We are shifting a lot of stuff to Pakistan. And the other main stuff is the biodiversity. Especially in Pakistan, the biodiversity, we are mainly lacking of the advanced technology. China is leading in agriculture in advanced technology. So we are trying to export all the advanced technology to Pakistan. Along with that, also the mechanization, because mechanization is also important to better production in Pakistan. So recently, a lot of the EV-based the tractor they have imported from China to Pakistan, and also we are getting a lot of the bio-based fertilizer from China to Pakistan. So I think China giving a lot of the edge for transfer the advanced technology in agriculture sector to boost agriculture in Pakistan. And other is the adaptability. Adaptability, actually still we are lacking a lot of resources in Pakistan. Like I mentioned, we don't have much water for the agriculture sector, because a lot of water is the silicotic soil, and it is a high TDS. So we are facing how we can reduce the good quality water for the irrigation. So I think in China, they also have developed a lot of the water treatment machinery, which can be helpful to use for the agriculture sector. We are trying to export all these technology to Pakistan, but it is a big challenge because the price is also very high. But in Pakistan, government is trying to introduce these technology at a local level, but adaptability at a local level still is a big challenge, because people are not that much rich, they can adopt these technology very efficiently. But it can be step by step adopted in a local environment.
So as what Dr. Hameed just mentioned, that adaptation has been a big challenge for developing countries. And that's also one of the calls made by Brazil at this COP30, is that instead, they're not saying that mitigation doesn't matter, it's just for developing country and the global south, adaptation is more urgent. And we still didn't really have a sort of a roadmap or a goal or a target about adaptation over the past 10 years. So Professor Zhang, I also like to ask you on the adaptation building part. For China, adaptation is also a big topic. We also have our national plan when it comes to adaptation. So how do you see the challenges, first of all, in adaptation building, and how should we overcome them?
Yes, I think this is a very, very interesting question. You know, your question reminds me first to the negotiations. You know, in the previous, in the first 10 or 20 years negotiation, mitigation is definitely the most important topic. And just in the recent years, adaptation issue now is more and more prominent due to the strong demand and calls from developing countries. Developing countries, generally speaking, more concerned about adaptation issues because they suffer more than developed countries in general term from the climate change, the extreme weather events, these kind of things. Then, just as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to adaptation issue, China, of course, in the last decade or 15 years, China paid more and more attention to adaptation issue. Adaptation compared with mitigation, what's the difference? Different people have different ideas. Adaptation issue seems to me, this is more comprehensive than mitigation. When it comes to mitigation, we say, okay, the temperature, okay, 2 degrees Celsius, 1.5 degrees Celsius, are very centered, very concentrated, focused. So, but in terms of adaptation, almost everything can be put into the adaptation issue. So sometimes we say adaptation issue is just like a big basket. Everything can be put in the big basket. If you put everything, sometimes it means nothing. So you lose your focus. This is, one of the big characteristics of adaptation issue. So how to get people, how to get the public and the government and the world, pay more attention to adaptation? I think that first, education. Education is very important. And then next, I just wanted to echo Dr. Hameed's point. In developing countries, I strongly advocate that more attention should be paid to the early warning system. The early warning system, because developing countries in terms of adaptation, they suffer a lot from the extreme weather events, the flooding, the droughts. But if we have a very the good early warning system, we can share this information, the data with the people, so that they have more time to prepare. The government or the people, the public, have more time to prepare for the extreme weather events. Sometimes they withdraw from this area, or they can find other alternatives. Therefore, I think in terms of adaptation, the first step, I would argue that we establish an early warning system. Now, China already established a nationwide early warning system. And now we are sharing this technology with Pakistan, with Ethiopia, African countries. This is very important. So in a challenge, I would say, this has much to do with this nature of adaptation. So we should focus on the education, educate people, including government officials. They more focus on the adaptation because generally speaking, the more loose, more comprehensive, it's not easy to get focused. That's my observation.
And since you mentioned, also want to check with you with one point. As you mentioned that in international cooperation, China is working with a lot of developing countries. And this year at this COP, there is a very big call among a lot of countries to hope China to take the leadership role in climate governance. So how should we understand that role? And also, can China be the leader in climate governance?
This is, a very big question. I think the Chinese and the people outside China very much concerned about this. They are very interested in this. My observation is that China so far doesn't use leader or leadership to describe its role. We say we are at the driving seat. We are torchbearer. We bear the torch. But we never use leader or leadership to describe China's role in global climate governance. However, no matter what phrase or words you use to define China's role, my observation is that China is going to play more and more important role in global climate governance. Because I heard a lot of suggestions because now U.S. withdraw from Paris Agreement, from the global climate governance. Now it's golden time for China to replace United States. I heard because I engage a lot of the dialogue and communications with foreign friends and counterparts. I heard a lot of suggestions from international experts. My observation is that no one single country in today's world can assume the global leadership alone in global climate governance. No one single country. Therefore, my suggestion is that China should participate in the collective leadership. My assumption is that, for example, G20. How about G20? How about China, EU, and US now is impossible now. But China, EU can play a more important role, and more broadly, G20 can play sort of a collective leadership, and China is part of the leadership, the global leadership. I think that's a very idea and the plausible solution to answer to your question. And I think that on some occasions, when it comes to the leadership, small island countries, they say, we want to assume leadership. So I think we can't just say China is going to, because many other countries want to assume leadership, global leadership. We cannot overlook these voices. Therefore, I think China is willing to be part of global leadership, no matter how you define the global leadership. This is the way I think China approach the global climate governance, make contribution to global climate governance. I think that's the correct way and the practical way to assume its role.
So what I get from you, Professor Zhang, is that you're sort of proposing a change of mindset, really, in thinking about diplomacy or governance in climate, is that we shouldn't be relying on one country or one force really in the world, but really to look at the material, the joint efforts. So I want to check with you too. Let's start with Dr. Hameed on what do you think of this material, these joint efforts, these joint leadership roles that countries take that?
I think the joint leadership or joint, the better word it can be the joint integration technology or integration adaptability. That is more better word. Because if we have to insist the specific type of the policies or the adaptation in a particular region, so we have to work together, especially what is happening in that type of region, what is the climate, what is the cultural difference, how they can adopt these type of technology. That is more important. Like the previous I mentioned in Pakistan, the adaptability, it is a still challenge in Pakistan. But first we have to educate them, like a professor mentioned, we have to educate the people. This is the main concern. And after education, how we can make the adaptability. It should be on the small batches. It cannot be utilized on the large scale at the once. We have to adapt one place, then we can make a set example. We can show the other people. This is adaptability, how we can reduce this particular region, the climate adaptability. This is their advantages, this is their pros. So in this way, we can think about for the education and adaptability in the other region. Similarly, like in the South Asian and the Asia, China have developed a lot of the technology. So right now we are inviting a lot of one road, one belt countries. So they are checking what they have achieved inside the China. So in this way, they can think about this is the technology, this is a low emission carbon, these are the very good technology in terms of climate reduction. So after that, they can adopt more easily as compared just talking about and say you should follow like this way. I think this is a more better way to educate and adopt these technology to the other countries.
And Binbin, what's your take on this joint efforts role that maybe it shouldn't be one country's responsibility?
Yes, just now you mentioned it's a kind of a mindset shift. I would like to say it's a paradigm shift. When we talk about leadership, behind this kind of words, there is a traditional mindset. Someone should, stand in front of all of us. Yeah. If we think in this kind of a mindset, then if this one didn't play a role as expected, then everyone will show finger on this country. And then the country will try to explain, but more blame will come on. So it's a kind of, if you didn't do well, you take all the responsibilities. But the fact is, climate change is our common challenge. No one can be left behind the scenes, so it means that everyone should count me in. Otherwise, if you only expect, you should take the leadership. Oh, if US cannot, why China? Oh, how about EU? Oh, how about Global South? Then we always, fell into this kind of old discussion. And it's also a kind of very passive narrative. So how can we step out from this kind of old narrative? And this is the first point. Like, count me in should be the principle. And in China, we have an old saying, 和而不同, which means that harmony in diversity. And in the climate discourse, it's common but difference, CBDR. Yeah. So it's very important to, now every state just respect each other. Yeah, like Pakistan, you have your own culture, you have your own roots, and you also have your own strength. Yeah, I think it's a timing for us because we named this session as tipping point. So it's a timing for everyone to stop, show fingers to others or show expectations to other countries. But really think, what I have. There is a story, an old story, like there is a beggar sit on a box and he begged for everyone, please give me some money or everything you have to help me. And then someone said, there is a box. You just stand on the box. What's inside? He said, it's just a box. Maybe my parents or ancestor left here, but I don't know what it was in it. I just sit on it. So why not open it? And when the beggar opens the box, there are golden coins. So I think it's a very good metaphor to help us to reflect what we have at hand. As I mentioned, Pakistan, all the countries in Global South, EU and the US, what you have at your hand. And then think about our common future. What kind of future you want to reach? And what kind of future you want to describe? And then please contribute your cent. You don't need to learn from China. Oh, China, you are the #1 to invest in renewable energy. Please share your technology with us. I think every country, if you think of your own resources, I think you can learn maybe a kind of wisdom from China, is that all the nature, if we really can think we are in the same system, the nature can nourish human. And then we can find everything we can help to address climate change. So this is why we call it as a tipping point, as a paradigm shift. Not learn from others. Look back to yourself, find your own strengths, and then come together with a difference, share different voices, respect each other. And I think only in this way we can really reach the future where all of us want to go.
At every COP, I would say there's always some pessimism expressed, saying, this COP isn't good enough. The outcomes are not as expected. But I guess what's really driving actions for us are those who stay on the positive side, who believe in joint efforts, who believe that we can move forward. So thank you today for joining us, and I think that's been a very insightful, some of the remarks from you guys. Thank you, Professor Zhang Binbin, and also Dr. Hameed, and thank you guys for coming to this taping of Climate Watch. And if you enjoy the show, you can find more episodes on your favorite podcast platform. Just search Climate Watch. Or if you have any stories you want to share about living in a changing climate or any of our topics, you can also drop us a line at radio@cgtn.com. Thank you for listening, and also thanks our lively audience today at Peking University. I'm Feifei, and I'll see you next time on Climate Watch.